Welcome to XO, where science meets heart at the kitchen table. I'm your host, Davey. In each episode, I narrate B-side tracks curated around a single theme: the why behind the ingredients, the swaps that make it better, and the stories that have been simmering for generations. No interviews, no guests, just me and you. This is EP 12, The Overnight Kitchen. Before we get into the kitchen, the techniques that run without you, the heat you stop applying, the cravings that ignore the calendar, the broth that builds itself while you sleep, I need to tell you what this episode is really about. It's not about cooking methods. It's about what happens when you stop doing all the work yourself. Because once you discover that steam is the lowest barrier path from raw ingredient to finished food, and that the question, what if I just made it myself, changes everything about how you see a fridge, you stop defaulting to the store. Once you understand that heat takes things away as often as it adds them, you start knowing which ingredients to keep out of the pan entirely. Once you realize your body doesn't check the calendar before telling you what it needs, the cinnamon in your pantry stops being a seasonal ingredient. And once you put scraps in the slow cooker before bed and wake up to a kitchen that smells like a restaurant, you understand that the best ingredient you have isn't a spice. It's the 12 hours between dinner and breakfast. 4 tracks. 1 kitchen. Let's let it run. Track 1. I'm steamed. A few months ago, I needed applesauce for a recipe, and I did something I almost never do. I read the label on the jar. Added sugar in applesauce. Apples are already sweet. The whole point of applesauce is that it's just apples. I stood in the grocery aisle holding a $4 jar of sugar-spiked apple paste and felt genuinely annoyed, not at the manufacturer, but at myself, for never having questioned it before. So I went home and made it myself for the first time in my life. The method was almost insultingly simple. 2 sweet apples, 2 tart ones. The sweet-tart balance matters. It's what makes the flavor round instead of one note. Peel them, core them, put them in the steamer basket of the pressure cooker. 8 minutes on steam. Transfer to a jar. 30 seconds with an immersion blender. 4 pinches of cinnamon. The result was so good, I stood at the counter eating warm applesauce with a spoon, trying to understand why I'd been buying this. That's when steaming changed how I think about prep. There's something about the simplicity of steam that lowers the barrier to making things from scratch. It's not roasting, which takes 40 minutes and requires you to watch it. It's not boiling, which requires timing and attention. Steam is patient. You put the thing in, set the timer, and it does exactly what it's supposed to do while you're doing something else entirely. The food comes out cooked through, tender, never waterlogged, because steam adds heat without adding liquid, so you keep the flavor you started with. I started applying the same logic to everything. Baby potatoes. 10 minutes in the steamer, let them cool, snack for the week. Carrots I'd bought for a recipe and half forgotten. 8 minutes, done, ready to go wherever I needed them. Once I steamed a batch of potatoes, and immediately followed with apples. 2 ingredients prepped in under 25 minutes total. The bigger shift was what it did to how I saw the fridge. Before, I'd open the refrigerator and see ingredients in various stages of potential and decline. Carrots from last week, an onion I kept meaning to use, half a bunch of celery, the specific low-level anxiety of seeing things approaching waste. After, I'd open it and see a different question. What if I just made it myself? That bunch of onions on the counter? Steam them soft, and they're the base for a stock that costs nothing. Those leftover vegetables from the week? 20 minutes in the steamer, and they become soup. The applesauce I make, I eat warm, stir into oatmeal, use in baking. It turns up everywhere because I made a whole jar of it instead of a single serving. The realization wasn't really about steam. It was about what happens when you lower the technical barrier low enough that making something yourself feels easier than buying it. You stop defaulting. You start improvising. The kitchen stops being a place where you execute recipes and becomes a place where you solve small problems with whatever's in front of you. 15 minutes here, 10 minutes there, one ingredient at a time. It starts with one question. What if I just made it myself? Steam is the gentlest way to apply heat, but sometimes the most honest thing you can do for an ingredient is skip the heat entirely. Track 2. Not everything needs the oven. I used to roast everything. Vegetables, always roasted. Olive oil, always heated. Herbs, always stirred into hot pans. It felt like cooking. If the oven wasn't on, dinner wasn't happening. Then one summer it was too hot to turn on the oven, and I made a meal entirely without heat. Shaved zucchini dressed in lemon and olive oil. Raw snap peas with tahini. A bowl of greens with cold chickpeas. And a dressing I whisked together in 2 minutes. It was one of the best meals I'd eaten in weeks. Everything tasted sharper, brighter, more alive. The snap peas had a crunch that roasted vegetables couldn't touch. The olive oil tasted like actual olives instead of just generic fat. The herbs were fragrant in a way they never are after 10 minutes in a hot pan. I realized I hadn't been enhancing these ingredients by cooking them. I'd been dulling them. We think of cooking as adding to food. You add heat, you add flavor, you add complexity. And that's true. The Maillard reaction, caramelization, all the good things that happen at high temperatures. Those are real. But heat also destroys things. Vitamin C breaks down above 150 degrees. The polyphenols in extra virgin olive oil degrade when you bake at high temperatures. The live cultures in yogurt, sauerkraut, and kimchi die in the oven. The volatile oils in fresh herbs evaporate within minutes of exposure to heat. Every time you cook something, you're making a trade. You gain the flavors that heat creates. You lose the nutrients and aromatics that heat destroys. For some ingredients, the trade is worth it. A raw onion and a caramelized onion aren't even in the same conversation. The Maillard reaction on a Brussels sprout is the whole point. But for others, your best olive oil, your fresh herbs, your fermented foods, your citrus, the trade goes the wrong direction. You lose more than you gain. The shift for me wasn't going fully raw. It was learning which ingredients to keep out of the heat. Good olive oil goes on after cooking, not during. I use a cheaper oil in the hot pan and drizzle the expensive one over the finished dish. That way the compounds I'm paying extra for actually make it to my plate intact. Fresh herbs go on last. Basil, cilantro, mint, dill, torn and scattered over the top of a warm dish, so the heat releases their oils gently without destroying them. Cooking these herbs for 20 minutes is like paying for a concert and leaving before the encore. Fermented foods stay cold. If I'm adding sauerkraut or kimchi to a bowl, it goes on top after everything else is plated. The warmth from the food underneath is enough to take the chill off without killing the probiotics. Lemon always goes on at the end. A squeeze of raw citrus over a finished dish does more for the flavor than the same juice would have done simmered into the sauce for 30 minutes. The meals I'm happiest with now almost always have a cooked element and a raw element on the same plate. A roasted sweet potato with a raw tahini lemon dressing, seared salmon with a cold cucumber salad, a warm grain bowl topped with fresh herbs, raw radish, and a drizzle of good olive oil, one-pan chicken with a pile of arugula dressed in nothing but lemon and salt. The cooked part provides depth, warmth, and the Maillard flavors that make food satisfying. The raw part provides brightness, crunch, and the nutrients that heat would have taken away. Together, they make each other better. Some nights I don't cook at all, and the dinner is better for it. Raw tahini whisked with lemon, garlic, and water until it's smooth and pourable. Shaved vegetables, zucchini, carrot, radish, dressed in that tahini with a handful of herbs and some toasted seeds for crunch. 5 minutes, no heat, no pan to wash, and every ingredient tastes exactly like itself because nothing got between it and the plate. Sometimes the best thing you can do for an ingredient is leave it alone. Knowing when to apply heat and when to step back, that's technique. But there's another variable in the kitchen that nobody talks about, and it has nothing to do with temperature, not the calendar. Track 3, season, not the calendar. It was July and I wanted soup. Not cold soup, not gazpacho, hot soup. The kind with roasted carrots and ginger and enough cinnamon to make the kitchen smell like October. It was 98 degrees outside and my body was asking for fall. I almost talked myself out of it. It's summer. You eat salads in summer. You eat cold things, light things, watermelon and cucumbers and whatever else the internet says you're supposed to eat when it's hot. Soup in July felt like a confession of some kind. I made it anyway. Roasted carrot soup with coconut milk, ginger, and a pinch of cinnamon. I ate it in the air conditioning with every window closed, and it was exactly what I needed. Not because my body was cold, because my body was tired. Summer is overstimulating. The long days, the heat, the constant brightness. Sometimes by mid-July, your nervous system isn't asking for another bright, acidic salad. It's asking for something warm and grounding, something that tells your brain to slow down. That's a fall flavor, and you're allowed to have it in any month you want. Cinnamon, nutmeg, clove, cardamom, star anise. We've filed these under fall and winter as if they expire in April. They don't. They're available year-round because they work year-round. Cinnamon helps regulate blood sugar regardless of the temperature outside. Ginger is anti-inflammatory in January and July. Turmeric doesn't check the forecast before it reduces oxidative stress. The seasonal assignment is cultural, not chemical. We associate warm spices with cold weather because that's when marketing puts them on the shelf. But your body doesn't care about the marketing calendar. If you're craving cinnamon in August, your body is probably asking for the metabolic stability that cinnamon provides, not a pumpkin latte. The trick I've been using all summer is simple. Take the fall flavor profile and put it in a cold format. Golden milk as a smoothie. Brew the turmeric, ginger, cinnamon pepper base the way you normally would. Let it cool. Blend it with frozen banana and coconut milk. It tastes like fall. It's cold. It works in 95-degree heat. Overnight oats with nutmeg and cardamom. Same warming spices you'd put in a November oatmeal, but soaked cold overnight and eaten straight from the fridge. The flavors are there. The temperature isn't. Iced chai brewed strong with whole spices. Cinnamon stick, cloves, cardamom pods, black pepper, ginger. Let it cool. Pour it over ice with a splash of coconut milk. It's the most grounding iced drink I've ever had. Nothing flighty about it. It anchors your afternoon the way hot chai anchors a cold morning. You don't have to eat a boiling stew in summer. You just have to stop separating flavor from temperature. They're independent variables. The meals I've enjoyed most this summer were the ones that stopped respecting the seasonal boundary. Grilled peaches with thyme and balsamic. The peach is pure summer, sweet, juicy, bright. The thyme and balsamic are fall, earthy, musky, complex. Together on the same plate, they create something that doesn't belong to either season. It just belongs. Roasted sweet potato, chilled, on top of a summer green salad with a lemon tahini dressing. The sweet potato brings density and minerals. The greens bring brightness and crunch. Your body gets both signals at once instead of waiting 4 months for one of them. Cold beet soup with a swirl of yogurt and a crack of cumin. The beet is grounding. The yogurt is cool. The cumin bridges the gap between comfort food and something you'd actually want to eat when it's hot. Your pantry doesn't have a calendar. The cinnamon doesn't know it's July. The nutmeg doesn't care. If you want warm spices in summer, use them. If you want a roasted root vegetable in August, roast it. If your body is asking for density and warmth in the middle of the brightest, hottest month of the year, that's not wrong. That's information. Follow the craving. Adjust the temperature if you need to, but never let the calendar tell you what to eat. The body knows what it needs regardless of the season, and the kitchen, when you set it up right, knows how to deliver without you having to be there. Track 4. While you sleep. I put a chicken carcass and some vegetable scraps in the slow cooker before bed one night. Onion ends, carrot peels, celery tops, a few garlic cloves, a bay leaf, water to the top. Set it on low and forgot about it. I woke up to a kitchen that smelled like a restaurant. The broth was golden, rich, and deep in a way that a 30-minute simmer never produces. The collagen had broken down overnight. The minerals had leached from the bones. The liquid had turned into something that felt like medicine when I drank a warm cup of it at 7 a.m. I didn't do anything. Time did it. That's the overnight kitchen. It's not about effort. It's about delegation. Giving your ingredients a job and going to bed while they do it. We've built an entire kitchen culture around speed. Instant pots, air fryers, high heat roasting, pressure cooking, all of it designed to compress time. And those tools are real. They work. I use them. But some things only happen slowly. Fermentation can't be rushed. When you leave salted cabbage on the counter, lactobacillus bacteria start converting the sugars into lactic acid. That's not just souring. It's predigesting. The bacteria are breaking down the fiber into forms your gut can use more easily. They're producing probiotics that support your microbiome. A head of cabbage becomes sauerkraut. A surplus problem becomes a health asset, but it needs days, not minutes. Marinades need time to penetrate. A 20-minute marinade only reaches the surface. Overnight, salt and acid travel through the cellular structure of the protein. The salt denatures the outer proteins and lets them hold more moisture, which means the chicken or fish stays juicier during cooking. By morning, the flavor isn't just on the food. It is the food. Cold extraction changes the chemistry. Cold brewed coffee is smoother and less bitter than hot brewed, because cold water extracts the flavor compounds without pulling out the tannins. The same principle applies to tea. Overnight, cold steeping produces a cleaner, rounder cup than boiling water ever can. None of these require skill. They require the one ingredient you can't buy at the store. I used to think soaking oats in the fridge overnight was just a convenience thing. Prep your breakfast the night before, grab it in the morning, save time. It's more than that. When oats soak in liquid overnight, the fiber hydrates slowly through osmosis. The texture stays intact. You get a chewy, structured oat instead of the mushy result you get from boiling. But the bigger benefit is chemical. Soaking helps break down phytic acid, which is a compound in grains that binds to minerals and prevents your body from absorbing them. By the time you eat those overnight oats in the morning, the iron, zinc, and magnesium are more available to your system than they would have been in a cooked bowl. Same principle applies to chia seeds. Soak them overnight, and they form a gel that's structured and satisfying. Try to rush the process with 10 minutes of soaking, and they're gritty and half-hydrated. The overnight version isn't just more convenient, it's nutritionally better. Time did the work that heat would have done worse. This became a nightly habit without me planning it. Slice cucumbers, radishes, or red onions. Drop them in a jar with vinegar, salt, and whatever herbs or spices are around. Dill, garlic, chili flake, peppercorns. Put the jar in the fridge before bed. By morning, they're pickled, not deeply fermented, not shelf-stable, but bright, tangy, and crisp enough to go on top of everything. Grain bowls, tacos, sandwiches, eggs. They're the acid component that most weekday meals are missing, and they cost almost nothing to make. I keep a jar going most of the time now. When one runs out, I start another before bed. The habit takes 30 seconds and it means there's always something sharp and crunchy in the fridge, ready to balance whatever I'm cooking. The single best thing I've done for weeknight dinners is moving the seasoning to the night before. Before bed, I salt the chicken thighs, rub the fish with spices, toss the vegetables in olive oil and garlic. Everything goes into containers in the fridge overnight. By the time I cook the next evening, the seasoning has had 12 hours to penetrate. The salt has moved through the protein. The garlic has infused the oil. The spices have settled into the vegetables. When it all hits the pan, the flavor is deeper and more even than anything I could achieve with a 20-minute head start. It also removes the worst part of weeknight cooking, the 6 p.m. decision. When the components are already seasoned and waiting in the fridge, dinner isn't a question. It's an assembly. The thinking happened last night. Tonight is just heat. The overnight kitchen is an anxiety filter. It takes the pressure off the evening and spreads the work across time. Broth simmers while you sleep. Oats hydrate while you sleep. Marinades penetrate while you sleep. Pickles cure while you sleep. You wake up and the kitchen has already done half the work for tomorrow. No alarms, no effort, no rushing. Just time doing what time does. The best ingredient in your pantry isn't a spice. It's the 12 hours between dinner and breakfast. That's EP12, The Overnight Kitchen. 4 tracks, 4 techniques that work without you. The steam that lowered the barrier until the question changed from, what do I buy, to what if I just made it myself? The ingredients that taste better raw, the good olive oil that belongs on the plate, not in the pan, the herbs that belong on top, not inside, the pantry that doesn't have a calendar, and the craving that told you what you needed whether it was July or not, and the kitchen that kept working while you slept, the broth, the marinade, the pickles, the oats, doing tonight what you'll be grateful for tomorrow morning. The best cooking isn't always the cooking you do. Sometimes it's the cooking you set up and get out of the way of. Here's to health, happiness, and a remix that's uniquely yours. Thank you for spending time with me. Food feeds the body. Music feeds the soul. Remixology is where they collide. Download the Remixology app. New music and recipes drop every Friday.